Morning. How we doing?
Morning.
Fantastic.
Good morning.
To be like
Alrighty.
that way she gets all this stuff.
Our recording has started. Thank you, Troy. Question of the day. I wrote this question of the day the other day. And now I'm feeling like, okay, is everybody else sick of Thanksgiving leftovers rather than wondering how to use them? Drop your answers in the chat. How do you love to use Thanksgiving leftovers? Myself, I'm not very fond of turkey, really. But we use it. I make a soup, and then I take the stuffing and I put it in the oven, super low, for a long time, dry it out, put some Parmesan cheese over it, and that's croutons for the soup that I make from the stock and the broth and the leftover turkey. So that's where I go with leftovers. Never mind the fact that I screwed them up this time, but that's where I like to go. Drop in the chat what your favorite way is. Let's do this here. There we go. Fresh pet. So Scott feeds his to the dog.
Absolutely.
David says he's got Laura sitting with him this morning, which is great because I have to come to Laura to tell a story here in a couple of minutes. David says, again, throw it all in a pot and reheat. Ooh, turkey pot pie. Thomas, I like that. I mean, I don't like turkey pot pie, but that's pretty good. What else we got? Open-faced turkey sandwich with mashed potatoes and gravy. Yep, I can see that. Sandwiches. Chad, how do you keep your sandwich from not being dry? How much dressing or mustard or mayo or whatever? Because like the dryness of the bread and I don't care how good you are at turkey, and I'm pretty good at turkey, keeping it moist enough to stand up to 2 pieces of bread, that was always tough for me.
Yeah, just a little mayo and just I like it dry. Yeah.
Oh, so you like it dry. You've just leaned into the desert. You're good with
Yeah,
that.
just a little mayo, but that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Do you need like a 32-ounce glass of water next to you? Because like,
No, no, you just got to chew it up a lot. Chew a lot.
longest lunch ever. Pot pie and sandwiches. I think as we have other people joining in here, I think we could probably get started. Laura, if you're in a place to talk, I'd like you to tell a story because in our last session, I asked you to submit the craziest way you've ever gotten a first meeting. And Laura sent me this email, and I'm reading this story in email, and I'm like, no way. And I loved it. And I actually, Laura, I don't know if you had, it's been a couple of weeks. I don't know if you remember, I asked you if you would be willing to share it. So if you're willing to share it, I'd love to have you pop on and just walk us through it because you in this group won the contest for wildest way to ever get a first meeting.
Hey, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. You're showing up as David, but that's okay.
Yeah, we're doing inventory today, so we're sharing a computer.
It's that time of year.
Yes. So I was living in Los Angeles in 2004, I believe, and I was the only salesperson for a startup gourmet ravioli and pasta company, and I was a chef for a very long time. And trying to get into C chefs is nearly impossible because they don't have time, they're not interested, and I know this. So I just started walking into kitchens. And because it was a high-end product, I decided I would hit the big hotels in Beverly Hills. So I parked in the employee parking lot of the Beverly Hills Hotel, walked through the loading dock, past security like I belonged there, got on the elevator and rode up and down until I found a housekeeper and asked where the kitchen was. It's on the 3rd floor, in case you ever need to know that. Marched into the kitchen to the chef's office, started to give him my spiel. And he was a Japanese chef, and he very politely said, "Come with me." I thought I was going to get kicked to the curb, but instead we went to the Polo Lounge and he ordered tea, and we started sharing personal stories and getting to know each other for about an hour. And when tea was done, he took me back up to the office, and then I could, demo my product. And I got an order from him that day and worked with him for a couple of years. And then when he left the Beverly Hills Hotel and went to the Beverly Hilton, um, he took me with him, or as a salesperson, took me with him. And so I got to see my ravioli served at the Golden Globe Awards that year, which was cool. Um, so I just learned that it's relationship building, not just here's what I'm selling. Do you want it?
Um, if you don't mind, you walked right in and you shot your shot. I mean, those three words come to mind: shoot your shot, right? And there's no way into the Beverly Hills Hotel other than the way you got in, right?
Yeah.
What do you think it was about that meeting, though, that made that chef give you those next 2 hours? Because this flies in the face of everything that I believe. And clearly it works. It worked for you. You just explained everything that you won as a result of it and the pride that goes along with that. But I would never, like, I'm all for people trying this in the absence of being able to get in any other way. But when I think about it today, who's got 2 hours to just sit down with the next random person who barges their way in through the employee entrance, right?
I think he was impressed that I got past security and found the
Okay.
kitchen, which is not easy to find, and just tenacity. And I think he just found that interesting. And he could have just taken me to the Polo Lounge and said, tell me, talked for a minute and then kicked me out. But as we got to know each other a little bit, it just, we were sharing stories. And I mentioned that he was a Japanese chef because I worked with many Japanese chefs after that. And that tends to be culturally how they do business.
Ah.
You don't just jump right in to, you don't jump right into business. You do the polite talking to each other and, getting to know each other, and then you jump in and do business.
So how many other times have you leveraged this kind of approach, whether it is making sure you don't come in too hard and too fast with a Japanese or maybe another Asian country, some type of heritage or other types of chefs like that? Or how many times have you just decided to say, you know what, I'm going to walk in and act like I own the place because that might be my only ticket in?
If I couldn't get an appointment, if I just couldn't even get past, the hostess or whoever was answering the phone, because we didn't really do business with email at that time.
Sure.
If I couldn't get a foot in the door, I would just show up at the back door. And sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't. But more often than not, it led to a conversation.
Two more quick questions, then I'll let you off the hook. Have you ever been kicked out of a place by trying to walk in through the employee entrance?
Yes.
Okay. But quick follow-up. Have you ever been banned from a place from walking in through the employee entrance?
No.
Okay. That's my point too. Because as you're saying this, I'm thinking back to my days selling into hospitals where I routinely walked past signs that said authorized personnel only, right? And I didn't have to do that very often without realizing that I actually was authorized. And many times I looked just like the other people who actually were authorized. So it was one of those things where, and I think back fondly to this because my best customer, I had coffee with them every Thursday morning for probably, 4.5, 5 years. And, they said just, yeah, come on back into, when you get here, come on by around 9. And when you get here, come on into the lab and you know where to find us and then we'll go. And every Thursday morning, I just walked in through a door that said authorized personnel only. The only reason that I was authorized was because I knew the person expecting me was expecting me, right? But nobody else looking around knew whether or not I was authorized. So there's this barrier that they put up, and it's actually kind of funny too, because I have one of these no solicitation stickers like on my front window that everybody else ignores, and I'm just kind of fine with it. I think it's kept some of the people out, but I walk by those things all the time. And the authorized personnel thing is kind of similar to that because, look, no one knows if you're authorized except the person you're probably going to see. Let them tell you to get out, right? That's kind of the point. So, Laura, I love the boldness of your approach. I love, your grittiness, your willingness to do that you shot your shot, and it turned out to be something tremendous. And I hope everybody listening right now can take a few things away from that, because sometimes that willingness to cross that line is the difference between success and failure. It's the difference between opening that account or not. And quite frankly, I think most people are afraid to cross that line because they fear the worst. Oh my gosh, I'm going to get escorted out of here. I'm never going to be allowed back in. Now, you might get escorted out, probably not. And you're definitely, well, I can't say definitely, security's tighter now than it ever has been, but you're probably not getting banned forever. And there's almost, there's usually this mea culpa of like, oh, I'm new here. I didn't know. I didn't see that sign. I'm really sorry. I'll never do it again. That'll keep you from getting banned. But yeah, the consequences aren't as bad as they could be. So you've got a cup of coffee coming to you, Laura. I'll send you an email after this and get your address where I can send it. And I'm not going to actually send the cup of coffee, but you know where I'm going with that. So thank you. Anybody else got a story they want to share quickly before we get into, today's work? Cool. All right, really quickly, just a quick reminder here. If you can, and I know some of you are doing inventory. I'm hoping you're paying more attention to this than the inventory, but if you can, please put your camera on. We get a lot better results out of these sessions when there are cameras on, when we can see faces and things like that. Obviously, if you're driving and stuff, let's not be distracted by it. And I don't need to see your sunroof, but if you can, please flip the video on. Okay, what are we talking about today? Talking about discovery. Last session, we talked about opportunity creation. Talked about getting your foot in the door. We talked about starting conversations. Now what we're talking about today is how we have those conversations. And what do we need to do to make the most of those conversations? And discovery is one of the aspects of the sales process that I think a lot of people misunderstand. And since they misunderstand it, they tend to get it wrong. I'm going to ask for volunteers. Anybody that we're a small enough group here, shout it out. Just take yourself off mute and shout out the answer. If you can tell me what you think is the difference between discovery and qualification, or if you think there is a difference. What's the difference between, or how do you separate the concepts of qualification and discovery?
Well, I would say discovery is finding out, and then after you find out, you got to sit down and figure out what it's worth.
Say more, Scott.
Walk into the building, notice that there's no chefs there on a Monday. You see the highest ranking person and there's a sous chef. Walk out, reevaluate the situation. No, you're not going back on a Monday.
Sure. Okay. I like that. I think of that as let me reframe the question. Discovery in terms of the sales call itself. I won't argue with what you said, but I think I framed the question appropriately. Doug, I see you with your hand raised.
Yeah, I'm not sure if I'm on the right path here, but I would think discovery is more, let me hear your problems, let me hear what I might be able to solve for you, asking a few pointed questions that's in the direction of whatever it is you're trying to sell. And then qualifying it is more toward the, well, can this guy afford the solution that I might bring to the table? And is this a realistic answer to what their problem is?
Perfect. I don't think I could have said it much better, Doug. Discovery sometimes includes qualification, depending on how you look at it. But when we talk about discovery, we're talking about the problems that we can solve for them or not. We're trying to figure out if there is an opportunity for us to work together. Qualification tends to lean on some of these older frameworks that you may have heard, like BANT, right? And I'm going to get into this with the next slide here, but I think the biggest mistake that people make, and I got ahead of myself with this slide, the biggest mistake that people make is that they rush through discovery to get to the selling part. They rush through discovery to qualify. They skip discovery to qualify. But a lot of times too, I think what we overlook, especially as much as we've talked about over the last few months, about how much they value your customers, value your professional expertise, how much they value your point of view, all of that stuff, none of which has to do with your product. But most sellers skip discovery to get to the presentation part or the pitch part, because that's the fun part in a lot of ways. That's certainly the closest part to money. But discovery is the selling part. How we ask the questions, how we raise our points of view, how we surface the conversations and the concepts that we're talking about. Really, really important. Now, when we talk about discovery not being equal to qualification, Doug, this is where I love the way you laid that out. Qualification are the things that we've heard of, like BANT, right? Budget, authority, need, timeline, right? Do you have the money for this? A lot of people would say, well, if they don't have the money, I don't need to do discovery. Scott, what you mentioned, there's only a sous chef there on a Monday, so I'm not going back on a Monday. If I can't talk to anybody with authority, then it's probably not worth having this conversation. Need, do they need what we have? Do they perceive the need for what they have or for what we have? And timing, when do they need it, right? Now, look, these are things that we can't ignore, but this is qualification of a deal. This is not discovering whether or not they have a problem we can help them solve. Okay? So I want to separate these concepts. Qualification is whether or not we have a deal, an individual deal. And there are a lot of deals that happen with a customer. Discovery is whether or not they have a problem we can help them solve. They perceive the need to actually solve that problem, and whether or not we feel, or whether or not they feel we have earned the right to help them solve it. Okay, so remember last session I talked about, let's talk about problems. Conversations about problems will lead to conversations around solutions. Conversations around solutions will lead to conversations around sales. We talk about problems, this is where we start doing discovery. This is where we earn credibility. This is where we ask the right questions. I'm going to get into that in a minute. This is where we start to build all of that rapport that we know is so important. And qualification, my contention is that if you do good discovery, the qualification does itself. But if you lead with qualification, it tends to preclude your ability to do good discovery, and you don't build the rapport that you should. Does anybody have a question regarding this? Am I clear with this? This is it's kind of a key concept here. I want to make sure we're all on the same page. Doug, you're looking at me skeptically. No? Okay. That's just your look.
No, that is what I've been born with. It's unfortunate, but it's the cross I bear.
Perfect. Thomas, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the point where we don't want to skip step one to get step two makes a lot of sense for sure. And the impactfulness of the discovery long term makes a lot of sense. That's where the relationship could begin or could be solidified. So yeah, all that rings very true.
And I know we're at the end of the year, And I know that everybody is in, let's get orders in, let's make hay while the sun shines. Let's get stuff in under, before the budget year ends, things like that. But if we skip the really important parts, it's kind of like being what they say, penny wise and pound foolish, right? It's like, okay, we'll get the order now, but we're precluding ourselves from building a longer term relationship. And one of the things, and you all know this, we've talked about this, this is an experienced group. The way you sell is more impactful than what you sell. And when you ask thoughtful questions, when you ask questions that make them consider new information, when you ask questions that make them think differently about what they do and how they can solve those problems, your rapport goes through the roof. You demonstrate expertise that way. It only helps your reputation. So I want you to think about it this way too. Another concept. And let me step back just a second. What I'm going to do with these next several slides and the concepts that I'm talking about today, these are distillations of what I have noticed over the last 20 years that I've been selling. My goal here is not so much to teach you something new, as much as it is to remind you of some things that you've probably done well, and maybe help you codify some of the things that you know you do well to make it easier for you to access them. I'm working with an experienced group here. I don't know if what I'm teaching you is going to be anything super new or revolutionary, so much as it's going to be put together in a way that allows you to access it a little bit more easily. And this rundown has helped me, and it's also helped a lot of people that I've worked with. So I want to be clear that what we're talking about today. But look, this is not an interrogation. This is an interview. And when we think about these kinds of conversations, there's obviously a lot of stuff that you need to know. But where I see reps fail, it's where they approach those things like a checklist, and it just sounds like you're treating your customer like a checklist at that time, right? Oh, okay. Well, how many do you need? What do you want? What are you trying to accomplish? Oh, okay, good. You have money for this? How much do you think it's going to cost? Oh, okay, great. This, and just kind of running it down. When you have so many things that you need to accomplish in a call, it's really easy to treat it that way because you want to make sure that you don't leave anything unchecked. At the same time, think about how your prospect feels. Think about how your customer feels. Do you want them to feel like you're using them to fill out a checklist? Or do we want this conversation to breathe? And it's really important to make sure that we ask follow-up questions. It's really important to remember that you have to bring curiosity to the conversation. You have to, when they say something that you didn't expect, dig a little deeper. I'm going to show you how to do that specifically in the next, few minutes here. But remember that we have a lot to get done. But the difference between a rookie and a seasoned professional is how they allow that conversation to breathe with the follow-up questions, asking the questions that you didn't think you were going to ask when you go in there as a result of the questions that you knew you were going to ask. A note here on notes. A lot of note takers on this call. I like the note takers. I think they help you catch all the stuff that slips through the cracks for certain, and I like to use them too. But there is real power in pulling out a pen and a pad of paper. And I don't know if you use your note takers or if you set your phone out and record any of your calls, while you're in person. I know that's something that's becoming more and more prevalent. But the power of writing things down, not only for yourself, but to underscore for them what you realize is very important. Huge for rapport building. I keep going back to this a lot. The way you sell says more about you than what you sell, or than the mechanisms that you use to sell. You're making an impression, especially when you're right there in front of somebody. It's really powerful to write things down. Can't underscore this point enough. And this gets to the idea of building that rapport. The emotions that your prospect has when you have conversations with them about the problems they're trying to solve are what will drive the sale. I learned this a long time ago. People buy emotionally first, they justify the purchase logically later. So what are the kinds of emotions you're trying to stir up in your prospect? I call that collective group of emotions tension. There's good tension, there's bad tension, right? A lot of traditional sales training mechanisms or methods will talk about pain and where's the pain and how are we going to find the pain? How are we going to make the pain more palpable? How are we going to take salt and rub it in that open wound to make it as painful as possible, right? It's a little sadistic if you ask me, but it also tends to work. I get it. The problem that I have with it is that a lot of times your customers, they can tell when you're just trying to exacerbate that pain and they don't like it. They can see it coming from a mile away. So when they feel like they're being artificially or intentionally made more uncomfortable, they see it as a salesy tactic and they don't love it. It also belies the fact that nobody buys a Mercedes because they need a ride to work. Nobody buys a Rolex because they need to know what time it is. And nobody flies privately because it's the only way to get where they're going. People buy nice things. That's obviously the top of the spectrum there. But people buy really nice things because it's fun to buy really nice things. So sometimes people buy not because it's because they're moving away from pain, but because they want to move toward pleasure. And so what we want to do with tension is we want to illustrate the gap between where they are right now and where they want to be. That's why questions about, what is it that you're struggling with right now, and what does good look like? What does success look like? Those are great kind of corner post questions that set the stage for illustrating that gap or illustrating that problem. When we have the problem or the gap clearly illustrated, then we can talk about the things that we can do to help them close that gap, or the things that can be done about closing that gap. And then we can talk about how we can help them specifically close that gap. But if there's no emotion there, they're not going to buy. If we put the logic first, there's logic around a lot of things. Well, if you bought this tableware instead of this, you bought these smallwares instead of these smallwares, you'd save a lot of money. Okay, there's a lot of logic behind why you would do that, but they don't feel particularly attached to that solution you're putting in front of them. So just because it makes sense doesn't mean I'm going to do it. There's a lot of things out there that make sense. But when you can get them to start to think about what success looks like, what good looks like in their restaurant, now all of a sudden they start to have some emotion around that. And when they realize they're not where they want to be, that's when you can actually get them to act. That's when you can get them to make a decision. That's when you can get them to move forward. So just a little bit about tension. It's not just discomfort. It's more than pain. And your ability to create productive tension in the sales call is what separates you from everybody else. And I want you to go back to all of your most successful sales. And I don't think you will find a sale that was ever made, at least a memorable one that was ever made, that wasn't an emotional decision that was able to be justified. And in some cases, you will remember decisions that were made, sales that were made that almost didn't make any logical sense whatsoever because there was so much emotion. No tension, no sale. You might see that on a quiz. Okay. Any questions about tension? Debbie, I just saw that, I saw your comment here. This also shows that you care about what they need. I'm a couple minutes behind, but do you want to add to that, or is that a pretty complete statement? Where's Debbie? Debbie still here? Oh, it was a drive-by comment.
Yeah, I know you're going in and out with me, Jeff. Like I hear I don't know what it is, but down here right now, I'm not hearing you really good and you're going in and out. So I don't know what she has going on. Thomas, you have an issue?
I'm here. It's just I can't talk very well.
Oh, got
Once
it.
you show them, yeah, I typed. Once you show them you care, they're more willing to purchase.
You may have stolen that from a slide that I haven't shown yet. Actually, yeah, totally agree. They
Well,
don't
it's
care about.
just that. Go ahead.
No, they don't care about what you have until you can demonstrate that you care about what they're doing.
Yes, you need to be there for them. And, I always tell my people, I'm here to help. You tell me what you need. And it's like, I draw my kitchens. Tell them, you tell me what you're thinking and what your needs are. And I'll actually sit down and sketch while they're talking. And then they go, oh my God, that's it. And you get the job, but you
Yeah.
just have to be willing to listen and to understand what their needs are, and then just give them what they need.
Yeah, and I think,
And then
Debbie,
it's not
go ahead.
even selling. You're just helping them. And they're really thankful for that.
Totally agreed. And thanks for popping on. I know that's not your normal voice. I hope you feel better soon. I think what you're talking about there too, it requires them feeling safe enough to tell you what they're trying to do, right? I can't just walk in and say, "Hey, what do you want your kitchen to look like? Let me sketch it while we're talking." Right? So the things that you do to build the rapport, to create that, I call it a psychologically safe space for them to have that kind of conversation, is really important. And again, we do that with the questions that we ask, not the things that we tell them. If you just walk right in, Debbie, and you can just say yes or no, or drop it in the chat or whatever. But if you just walked in and said, "Hey, I'm the best in the world at what I do," you just lay it
No.
out for me and I got you. I don't know if that's going to work for somebody that you don't know very well.
I don't think so.
Thank you. So on this slide, I have what I call the 6 outcomes of great discovery. When you're doing discovery really well, you will create these 6 outcomes. You will ensure that these things happen. The first one is connection. You have this connection with the person. They appreciate who you are, they appreciate what you're doing, and they're willing to give you, at some point, at least the beginnings of what Debbie was just talking about. It's interesting, and I say this just about every time. I should just keep rubber bands on my desk. But when we think about tension, okay, if I've got a rubber band and it's between my 2 hands here, the further I pull that on that rubber band, the more tension there is on it, right? But if I let go of that rubber band and it's not connected anymore, there's no tension on it. So you cannot create any tension unless you first create a connection. So when you do good discovery, you create that connection first. The next thing you create is an understanding. And I'll just continue to use Debbie's example here because she has a way, once that connection is established, she has earned the right to make them feel understood. She's earned the right for them to give her the information that she needs to understand them. Now, once she understands what they're trying to do, once she understands where they are today, she can create tension. Debbie, my guess is that you're going to ask questions because of your expertise that they may not have thought about. Well, have you thought about where your suppression is going to go? Have you thought about the workflow? And this is really a tighter space in person than it looks like on this schematic here. So, okay, we may want to consider this or this or this. Your expertise gets them to think about things that they may not have been able to think about. When they realize that you know things that they don't know, that they should probably know, that creates tension. There's emotion. Those emotions are, wow, there's some things that could go wrong here that I haven't thought about. Okay, that's important. There's also some emotion around, wow, Debbie really knows her stuff. She's someone I think I probably want to work with. That tension leads to context. Now when we've got this tension, we've laid out this environment, we've created the scenario where this suggestion makes a lot of sense. This other suggestion makes a lot of sense. This suggestion that you may have thought of initially doesn't make any sense at all given the context that we've created together. And expertise is something that comes out of this, and I kind of reference this a little bit in the tension part, but when Debbie's asking questions that her prospect hasn't thought of, all of a sudden Debbie is recognized as the expert. And when you know you're working with an expert, that's where you feel comfortable as the prospect. So when you do discovery right, you create this environment where all this stuff exists. We're connected. I understand you. Here's some tension that we're creating. It's also creating context, demonstrating expertise. And now we feel comfortable moving forward. At the very least, we feel comfortable having more conversations around what this project might look like. If you don't create these 6 outcomes, your deals and your relationships will suffer. This is what we're going for. What I will also argue, and we go back to the qualification thing, is if you do discovery well, qualification takes care of itself. When you think about the questions that you want to ask, when you think about, okay, we're connected, I understand the situation, and okay, here's what could go wrong, here's what could go really right. We've got the context around this. Context usually includes authority, the decision makers, the people who need to be involved. It usually includes their needs and the things that they don't need. It almost always includes the timing, because every minute is valuable in the restaurant industry. And if it doesn't get to budget, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. It's usually going to come up. But when it doesn't, if you've had a conversation like this and you're getting ready to wrap, and at the end of the day, you're thinking, okay, well, gosh, I need to know if they have budget here. My favorite question to ask is, okay, based on everything we've talked about, we didn't get to this, but hey, have you thought about in any kind of range what this might cost? That will get you pretty darn close to their budget if they don't give you the budget themselves. That's for a new project. That's for old projects. That's for smallwares. That's for whatever. Your smallwares discussions are probably going to be a little more transactional. I get it, unless you're talking about big changes to the dining room or whatever. But like, you all are experienced enough to understand this context. You can get your qualification done without them feeling like they're being qualified. That's the take-home lesson I want you to get from today. So, what do those questions look like? I like to divide them 3 ways. First, ask questions that they don't know the answer to. I read in the Little Red Book of Selling, just had this out yesterday. The Little Red Book of Selling, this is Gimmer again. He refers to these questions as power questions. They make your prospect stop, think, and consider new information, and then hopefully answer in terms of how you can help them, right? These are tension-filled, provocative questions. Now, we're beyond rapport building here a little bit. We've gone through pleasantries, things like that. We're talking about a project. So let me ask you a question that I'm not sure you know the answer to. We're going to get things started there. The second type of question are answers that you don't know the answers to. And I get it. Why would you ask a question that you know, or why would you ask a question that you already know the answer to? A lot of salespeople do this, and it's manipulative. So you have to bring curiosity to the table. Otherwise, your prospect is going to feel like they're just being put through a process. And they don't like that. And they're more sensitive to it than they ever have been. But here's the subtext to this type of question. It's bring your curiosity. Don't come in with a set list of questions that you need to get through. Come with a set of conversation starters and then get curious and explore from there. When you're willing to explore, you show them that you're not scripted. You show them that you actually do have an emotional connection to this project. You're interested in them. You're interested in their project. They feel like you're here to collaborate, not just put them through the ringer and walk out with a check. This is also going to help you establish boundaries to a project in a much broader sense than what they probably thought initially. And the third type of question is questions that neither of you know the answers to. This is what I think, this is the biggest opportunity that is missed by most salespeople. And I like to think about these questions in terms of figuratively, sometimes literally, since you are, in person a lot, but kind of wrapping your arm around their shoulder and looking off into the horizon together. These are daydreaming questions. These are questions that help you set the tone for what could be possible if you were to pull this project off. If they were to pull this project off. Here's where we're bringing in positive emotions. And when we think about tension and we think about emotion, we think about this roller coaster, we think about journeys. Great salespeople will ask questions that sometimes create some negative emotions or some cautious emotions. Wow, there's really a lot riding on this project. I need to get it right. I better have an expert on my side. I better have someone who's done this before. I better have someone I believe can help me. That can be a little off-putting. But then toward the end of your conversation, when you reset that and you say, okay, but what happens when we win? All of a sudden, there's dopamine response. Now they're thinking, okay, I know it's going to be tough. I believe I've got help. Man, it's going to look great when we pull this off. That's someone who's ready to get to work with you. Most salespeople don't ask these questions because they forget that they've earned the right to. And, we're taught as sellers to not ask questions that we don't want to know the answers to. So that tends to tends to help us or encourage us to avoid that really curious space. But you need to get curious. And real curiosity means you're willing to be wrong. That vulnerability is important as part of the relationship. We've talked about this before. So understanding that you've done this before, understanding you bring a tremendous level of expertise to the relationship, and understanding that there's a lot that you're going to have to roll up your sleeves and dig into together, that's what builds these relationships that last forever. Dupree, you've been doing this for a long time. Can you confirm or deny where I'm going with this? Let's see if I can unmute you. Here we go. Oh, I cannot.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Can
sure
you hear me now? Okay, sorry. It was giving me a weird thing. Yeah. So I'm kind of I do use this strategy a good bit. Customers will have, one idea of what they want to do. And a lot of times it's just not realistic, or it's going to be, they don't realize what the outcome is going to be. So I'll be Dupree Downer and catastrophe, and tell them the negative things about what they're trying to do and say, hey, you can't do this because of XYZ. You got to catastrophize this for D heck because they're going to look at it this way. You can say you're going to do this all day, all the things. Depending on what the situation is, but then you come back with a solution and then they're like, oh, well, we're still able to get my outcome, even though it's not my crazy way that I, dreamed about it in the shower before I came to you about it. And we come with something realistic that can be done. Or sometimes I just have to, sink the whole ship because they'll just have such an outlandish concept. Like, they just keep trying to cook meat without a hood or something. And you're just like, man, you just can't, it's going to be, you're going to be pigeonholed into a lot of different situations. Not that you still can't with like ventless combis, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, I do that. I like to bring the bad news, and then it helps when you come with that solution and get the sale, and then they trust you, and then you gain trust because you can see that you're leaning on your expertise to solve their problem. But
think trust and truth start with the first three letters. That means they're very, very closely related. I haven't actually looked into the word history behind that. I probably should. Maybe that's what I'll do when I get off this call, because that just hit me. But like sometimes delivering bad news is the best thing you can do, because they know you're going to shoot you. They know you're going to shoot them straight. It's huge. Thanks, Dupree. Got one more slide to get through here, and then I'm going to turn this over to you all. Except not Debbie. Debbie, you've contributed enough with your voice today. Thank you. What do strong discovery questions look like? Now, last session, we talked about open-ended questions and how they're not the first questions you want to ask. We want to get in, is this something worth talking about first? Okay, once it's worth talking about, then we can dig into some of these longer longer answers or questions that will lead to longer answers. We want to get them up and talking, but when we go in too fast and too heavy with these open-ended questions, they become too hard to answer. So it's easier just to not say anything, right? But once we have this meeting, once we have the time set aside where we can discuss this stuff, we want to make sure that we're asking thoughtful questions that are going to keep the conversation moving. So, again, what's your timeline for new openings? Where are your current vendors falling short? Is there anything, if there was something you could change about your current vendor, what would it be? What's more important to you, speed, cost, or consistency? And these are questions that I'm sure that with context and in the right framework, you all can ask better versions of these, but I'm trying to just put some examples out there for you. But in the next part of this deck, and we may not get to all the examples. I've got a few examples, depending on how you guys, come with your experience personally. But like, need any fry baskets today is a different type of question than, and obviously these aren't the same question, but, tell me about your onboarding process for new kitchen openings, right? Where did backlogs occur? Where did delays occur? Right? Again, we go back to my college roommate, Rob. You got anything I can have? That's not a question that's going to get you invited back. But when you ask a question that's structured around a problem or a priority that they have, you're going to go further. So think about asking follow-up questions. Think about keeping the ball in the air. And also, your key customer value points here. These are the things that they're thinking about. These are the priorities that they have. Ask open-ended questions around these value points. So now I want to turn this over to you, because I've been talking a lot. What are your favorite questions to ask? What are your favorite questions to ask that get a conversation started? And what I would even encourage you to do as you come off mute is give me a specific one, even in a specific situation. Maybe you don't know, maybe you don't have a go-to, but there are some specifics that we can use and we can distill, kind of extrapolate from.
I always use, what is your wish list, and what can I help you bring into the building with some magic? And it always gets a giggle.
Do you wear, I know you got the beard. Do you ever wear a red Santa hat and a big red coat when you ask that question?
Hold on. I don't know. You can see that today?
I can.
That's the Grinch, baby. I'll be their Grinch, or I'll be the jolly old Saint Nick. Whenever you sign that PO, it just makes me smile.
What do you normally hear when you, do you find commonalities when you ask for the wish list?
Yeah, a lot of commonalities. You'll get some core items on their capital lists, and then you'll get some onesie twosies that'll make Phyllis over in the pantry happy, or you'll get some stuff that they'll need that the third shift needs, just to be able to provide, a cleaner environment for the, first shift team coming in. So it goes pretty much around the whole, facility when you break that, because they start thinking of what people complain about the most and what they can do to get them to just hush in a way.
love that question because for exactly what you just said, it's now all of a sudden it's kind of open ended, and it's let me think, and there's probably stuff that they were not ready to say at the beginning that now their brain is going and something else pops in. Oh, and while I'm at it, yeah, we need one of these because Phyllis was just complaining about this yesterday, right? It's not what this
And then
kitchen. It's not what they
and
woke
then
up
I'll
thinking
go
about,
along
but
too.
yeah.
Yeah, and then once he goes along or she goes along and they describe what they need, I'll roll up to the line cooks or I'll roll up to the saucier and be like, man, you feel left out? You don't feel any love? And it just starts another conversation. And, here comes a couple more things for them or that, you know what I mean? And so on and so forth. So you just got to be able to just bounce it around the room.
Love that because we've talked a lot about walking the kitchen, right? You can walk the kitchen, you can point stuff out. What you're talking about, Scott, is actually having the entire team kind of walk their own kitchen.
Correct.
Awesome. Thanks. Carl, what about you? You're an inside seller. So you're not physically walking kitchens. What do you do to get conversations going?
I mean, I basically start off just asking them what it is that they're needing, and we go from there. So, I mean, it's really, what is it that I can help you with? What is it that you're needing assistance with? And then just go from there with what the customer's looking for. Because typically, a lot of times they're calling in for specific things that
Okay.
they've already seen.
So if they're calling you, then they probably have a reason for that call, right? It's not a social call, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Got it. So they call in with what they need. How do you start getting them to realize some of the things that they may need, but they aren't thinking about it at that time?
Well, so I had a customer the other day that they were getting ready to check out on our website, and they were just ordering a bunch of gas equipment, but they were just ordering the equipment. So she wanted to call in and ask some details about availability, pricing, things like that. And so of course then it was, well, do you have gas hoses that you're going to need for the equipment? Do you have everything that you need to get started with hooking the equipment up? Because her thing was she was replacing existing equipment. So it was just making sure that she was going to have what she needed to be able to use the equipment when she got it.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Sherry, what about you? Because you're selling linens.
Get on here.
There we go.
There we go. There we go. Well, I know, we do different linens and, we've got a poly cotton, we've got a polyester. So when I'm talking to the customer, I basically, got to know the differences between the materials, and I ask them what they are mainly looking for in their, restaurants or, cafes, whatever they may need it for. And, I usually just, want to know what's their main goal for our product. I mean, how, then I try to help them, and I try to place them with certain, you need vinyl table coverings. So, I mean, that's basically some of my main questions. I mean, I need to know, what I can do to, further help them. But it's the knowledge. You have to know, you have to have the knowledge about the product. And I just take it from there.
Do you find that they know what they really want, or do they just kind of have an idea and say, well, let's just like,
Well,
is it really a
sometimes they
project or
do.
is it an afterthought for them?
Sometimes they do, and sometimes it's just you walk into even a dealership or anything, and they may just have one certain type of material there, certain sizes. And then I go in and I try to talk to them. I explain, that the banquet tables are, being used a certain size, and you don't have that on your shelf, but I think that would be a great seller. So I just try to talk to them and generate, some different ideas.
I like that you say that because again, in terms of questions that are hard to answer, that what do you need question can be hard to answer. Now, it's one thing, Carl, to your standpoint, they called in because they need something. They have something on their mind. That makes a ton of sense. That's great. But need anything else is really hard because there's a million things going through their heads. And as much as we'd like to give our prospects and our customers credit for knowing their business really well and being super focused, we know that not to be the case. I mean, real life tells us otherwise. So it's really valuable here. And maybe you make a cheat sheet or, a reference card for yourself. These kinds of customers that call in, here are the kinds of recommendations or offers I want to make. And the reason that offers work is because they are tangible and contextual. You give someone specific, like, look, when you're, this is an old cliche, but do you want fries with that is a closed-ended question, but it also increases your ticket value, right? So once you've gotten through the meat of the question, to be able to make an offer, and I'll just expand on do you want fries with that? It's like, a good portion of the kitchen managers that I'm talking with have, are also adding French fries to the order. Is that something you're interested in? Does that make sense? Should we explore that? Right? And Sherry, if I go back to your example of, the cotton poly blend or the all cotton or all poly or whatever, they call in asking for something. And you say, you know what I'm noticing is with projects like what you're describing, a lot of people are leaning in this direction for A, B, and C. Is that worth talking about? It's really worth talking about for you when A, B, and C are more expensive than what they're buying right now, more valuable, right? But it gives you the opportunity with context to upsell either in price or in volume or a different line extension or whatever. And when you're prepared for those kinds of things, it really helps guide that discovery, right? And we've gone a little bit from, discovery to upselling and things like that. But I want you to think in terms of the questions that you ask. We want to get people to think, but we also always need to be conscious of the idea that some questions are too hard to answer and we get no answer instead of something we can actually do something with. Right? It's like, actually, Ian said this a couple of times. We're going to talk about this later when we get into objections and stuff. But he's like, the sale happens when the customer says no. So even no is an answer that you can do something with, whereas a non-answer is really hard. I'm going to send you this deck. I'll just put these slides in the next newsletter. Because they just illustrate what we've already been talking about. And I know we're running short on time. And there's one thing I want to get at here. You will have people that you get in to see. You will get their attention, or you will get some of their attention. And they'll say, oh, just tell me what you got. Don't take this bait. This is an easy way for them to get you out of their way, especially if it's somebody new. You've done this. And you know what, Laura, this could have been you, right? With the Beverly Hills Hotel. Oh yeah. Okay. You're here. Yeah. Okay. What do you got? I'll give you 5 minutes. What do you got? And it's like, okay, well, unless I can go back and create those 6 things those 6 outcomes of great discovery, it doesn't make sense for me to tell you what we've got. Because particularly without context and without me demonstrating the expertise that I have, it doesn't matter what I have for you because you're not comfortable enough to buy it from me yet. So don't take this bait. If they're interested enough to hear it, they should be willing to give you a few minutes to do some discovery. And if they don't have time for them, or they don't have time for you to do any discovery, they're not going to buy from you anyway. So please avoid wasting your time. And certainly don't skip the opportunity to, develop that relationship. So never, ever, ever take that bait. No demo without discovery. No pitch without asking some questions first. And just a rundown of today's takeaway, right? Open-ended questions are good. Position your products based on solving problems, not features. Those follow-up questions are important. Know when to use yes and no questions and when to use value-driven questions. But discovery is the selling part. Don't skip it. All right. Well, I want my. There we go. Now I can stop sharing. We're right up at time. Any thoughts before we break today?
Everybody have a good Christmas.
A good Christmas? We're going to meet before we have Christmas.
Some will be on vacay. Group B, Group A won't get to being a lot. That's why I think you get a lot less faces here. And then
Okay.
Doug, when you get a chance later, give me a shout or something. I just thought about while we were on this call.
Cool. Thanks, everybody.
Okay.
We'll talk to you. We've got a joint session in 2 weeks. It'll be our last session before Christmas. Hope everybody's going to be there. And yeah, we'll see you soon. Thanks.
Jeff?
Thank you.
Hey, Chef.
Yes.
Hey, Jeff.
Thank you.
I have a question.
Shoot.
I've got a customer that I've done business with for years. And all of a sudden, I see they got a new purchasing agent there at the company. And I've contacted him, I've called him. He has told me, hey, I am getting ready to place an order. So he had a few questions. I answered those questions, and it's been 2-3 weeks and I still have not received an order. So I called him, I left a message, and I get no response back from him. So I don't know where to go. I'm kind of like, I've had this company for years and I don't want to let them go. I just
Do you
don't know
have
what
them?
my
Do you
next
have
step.
them via? Are they near you to where you can travel to see them? Is this an
Yes,
in
they
front or is
are.
this somebody on the
Yes,
phone?
yes, I can. I can see them. I've asked to see if I could set up an appointment, but he just had a few questions about changing maybe some of the packaging. And I went over that with him over the phone. But then I just can't get him to react to anything. I mean, I'm confused.
Well, Jeff can give you his, and I'd give you what I would do. I would go in with 2 or 3 of your samples that he's currently using and give him 2 or 3 new things. And then it'll just open the door. Everybody likes free, and it'll start a conversation for you. And then you'll be able to read the room, hopefully, and say, okay, is he going with a vendor he brought previously? Is there other samples that look similar? Is there something that he grabbed from another vendor that I can bring in to try to compete? To me, it's always been face to face, and then let me bring you something to ease the conversation and ease you in. Everybody always likes free. So, Jeff, you
Right.
can piggyback in if you want.
I don't have any arguments with that because it's super specific to what you do, and you've got that experience, Scott. Sherry, when I think about follow-up, when I think about people who ghost, what's the reason you're having the conversation altogether? That reason was a priority of his, a problem he's trying to solve, etc. And so anytime I'm following up, anytime I am, I try to never follow up or circle back or touch base, right? Nobody wants their base touched. But if we were talking about a particular problem that has a solution, I'm going to reach out, and I'm going to reach out multiple times. I'm going to say, hey, Scott, I don't know what this guy's name is, but hey, Scott, last time we talked, there was an issue. I haven't heard from you in a while. Is this issue still a priority for you? And go back to the problem. Always, 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 always return to the problem. That's objection handling, that's negotiation, that's follow-up, that's prospecting, really. Except when you think about negotiating objections and following up, we have more context about the specific problem. So I never want to touch base to see if they still want to place that order. I never want to follow up to see if anything has changed. What I want to do is say, hey, Sherry, this was a pretty significant issue for you. Is that still an issue, or has something else taken its place? And what I've found in my career is I've been ghosted exactly once because I'm relentless with my follow-up. And if you follow up long enough, and I've done it with every situation except for one, and this one grinds me a little bit, it's that something else outside of their scope or their control came in, and their priority had to change for some reason. And they almost always, when they get back to me, they say, I'm sorry, here's what happened. And it almost never had anything to do with me.
Right.
So I think for you, again, what was the problem that you were trying to solve, the priority you were trying to address, and then all of your outreach. And this outreach could be 2 or 3 times a week. It could be a phone call and an email on Monday, with a voicemail. And it could be on Wednesday, you call again. It could be on Friday, just an email. And then the next week, you were to the point where he was ready to place an order. So this
Right.
priority was big enough to solve. If something else changed and you've had this customer for a long time, they have no reason to completely avoid you. Chances are something else came up that they're addressing, and just approach it with empathy and a focus on the problem you're trying to solve.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And I think, just to dovetail with what Scott said, what Scott laid out was a very tactical and proactive approach to doing that, and a very specific approach to doing that. If they're close enough to stop by, come in with your samples and say, hey, here's what we talked about. It sounded like this was what you're trying to solve. Here are some solutions for you. Is now a good time to talk about this?
Okay.
Or even, we'll call it a threat, or the suggestion. It's not really a threat, but the suggestion that you would come into town or fly into town. Hey, I'm going to come, I'm going to be in your area next Thursday. Can we have time to talk about this? I have a couple specific things I want to show you.
Okay.
The more specific you can be with your follow-up to the stuff that is important to them, the more likely they'll pick up the phone and call you back.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thanks for the
See what I
question. It's a
can
really
do.
good one.
You're welcome. Thank you for your help.
All
Have a
right.
good day.
You too. Thanks everybody for hanging on.